Hey friends, and welcome back to another episode of Entitled People. Hope you're all doing awesome today, and it's time for more Reddit stories. So let's get into it, guys. You watch anime, so babysit my peeping Tom kid. The Bad Neighbor Chronicles. This happened a few years ago, but to this day, hubby and I still share the stories of two terrible women that haunted the complex, where we rented our first real apartment. This is a story from the Tish saga. We met our upstairs neighbors, a mother whom we'll call Tish, and her 12-year-old son whom we'll call Jay, the very day we moved in. It was raining, so it was odd to find the pair standing at the foot of the staircase that led up to their apartment, which was directly above ours. Tish told us that Jay wanted to ask us a question. Jay pointed to the clothes basket in hubby's hands, which held our PlayStation and Switch. He told us in the sweetest, most polite voice that he'd been watching us unload our truck and had seen the consoles, and he asked us if he could borrow one of them. Hubby was and still is understandably super protective of his things, and even if my Switch wasn't brand spanking new at the time, there was no way I was going to loan a stranger of any age a $400 console. We gently declined. Tish quickly scolded Jay, as if she hadn't known what he intended to ask us. But Jay didn't seem fazed by the rejection. Instead, he smiled sweetly and told us he'd run upstairs to, quote, get something to trade us for a console. Tish, apparently oblivious to her fury just seconds before, smiled like this was a great idea. But because it was raining, Jay slipped on the stairs to their apartment and grazed his leg. What preceded was what can only be described as the monolith-shattering screams of the elder blood. Hubby nearly dropped the clothes basket in his rush to help the kid. But Tish pushed hubby aside, grabbed Jay by the arm, and dragged him upstairs, shouting at Jay for being so rude. Hubby and I were speechless, but neither of us would say what we really thought. Go get the deposit back from the landlord now. Anyway, Jay didn't bug us about borrowing a console again. But over the next few weeks, we noticed he was always hanging around outside our apartment. When we got home from work, he'd be sitting on our porch or in our lounge chairs. Sometimes he'd be playing in the grassy area. That was technically our lawn, since we had to care for it. One day when we came home, we caught him peeking through our kitchen window. When hubby confronted Jay, Jay smiled sweetly and said that he just wanted to know where the delicious aromas came from. Tish never cooked, so he liked the smell of our apartment. It was hard to be stern with Jay. He was obviously invading our privacy, but he was also so sweet and well-mannered. It was actually a wonder he was issued from Tish's womb. Over the weeks, she'd proven to be quite selfish and negligent. Half the time Jay was playing in our grass, it was because she wasn't home, and had told him to play outside so that he didn't, quote, mess up the apartment. This was always during the day, however, and the property was secure. Would I do what Tish did? Never. But since Jay was 12 years old and the neighbors were all very trustworthy, we didn't call social services. Late one night, hubby and I were getting cozy in our living room. Real cozy. We were watching a sexy movie. We'd had some wine and a nibble of a special cookie. We knew that even though we had blackout curtains, we were running the risk of being heard by the neighbors on either side and above, so we kept things quiet. Once we were done, hubby walked over to the kitchen to get a glass of water, completely ignorant of the fact that we'd forgotten to close the kitchen blinds. When he jumped, I thought it was because he'd almost exposed his willy-dilly ding-dong to the poor old lady next door or something. But no. Hubby grabbed his pants and rushed back to the window, staring curiously, almost angrily into the darkness. He'd seen something, he told me, but whatever or whoever it was, they were gone. We tried not to think anything of it, and we decided that we'd reserve our cozy activities for the bedroom, out of respect for our neighbors and to avoid humiliation. Not long after, we began watching Dragon Ball Super. Watching it in the living room was preferable because anime is better enjoyed on a huge television and a great sound system. It was late, around 11 p.m. on a Saturday, and we'd watched a few episodes, but for some reason that I can't remember, we paused. Hubby asked me if I wanted to watch another episode. Yes. Y'all, I didn't say that. Hubby didn't say that. The answer came from the window right above our heads. Hubby leaped from the sofa and threw open the front door. There, sitting as politely as you'd please on our porch in a lounge chair with a blanket at 11 p.m. on a Saturday, was Jay. He'd pulled one of our lounge chairs up to the window and had been watching TV with us through the crack in the curtain we'd left to catch some breeze. He stared at hubby happily, happier than Tom Cruise proclaiming his love for Katie Holmes on Oprah. Well, he was, until hubby picked up a rock and threw it at him. Okay, was it creepy for the kid to have been peeking into our living room from the window at 11 p.m.? Of course. Was it cool to throw rocks at him? Hubby and I disagreed. Being a teacher, I couldn't rationalize that level of retaliation against a child, no matter if he were Thin Man from Charlie's Angels level creepy. After Jay ran off screaming like a macaw in heat, I told hubby we had to apologize in the morning. But we'd also talked to Tish about Jay's inappropriate behavior. Tish was pretty chill the next morning when we went to see her upstairs. She even laughed when hubby told her about throwing the rock, which I found super weird. Tish just shook her head and told us that Jay thinks we're the coolest. Maybe, she said, we should just invite Jay in next time. Next time? Wouldn't it be weird, i.e. red flag behavior, for two grown-ass adults to invite a 12-year-old into their apartment at 11 p.m.? Tish laughed. No, she can tell we're not those kinds of people. She can tell we love kids. Why would we watch Dragon Ball Super and have video games if we didn't? But we're so mean to Jay. Every day Tish sends him down to play with us, and we ignore him. It's so cold how we just let a child run around knowing he's all alone. You're his mother. You leave Jay all alone in the first place. Ugh, we're so out of touch. We have no idea what it's like being a single mother. All she wants is a few hours on the weekend to enjoy herself. Jay wouldn't be scaring us if we just let him into our apartment when she goes out with her friends. We have video games and we watch anime. Hubby lost it. He told Tish what he really thought about her and her weird kid. He told Tish to hire a babysitter, or he'd personally call our landlord and report her. Tish sucked her teeth and slammed the screen door in our faces. But before she could slam the main door, she told us that moving forward, we needed to make sure our curtains were closed if we were going to walk around our apartment naked. Then she looked down at hubby's jewel area and laughed. Honestly, I just feel bad for that kid. He obviously has an awful and selfish mother. And the kid definitely needs some friends, but the mother is pushing that responsibility on OP and her husband. Entitled family tried to steal my dogs. Big mistake. This happened when I was 12 years old and figured I'd share my experience with an entitled family who tried to steal my red-bone coonhound. I grew up on the family farm in the middle of nowhere. We own approximately 350 acres and have a ridiculously long driveway, and you can't see the house from the main road. So often, people see our dogs and think they are lost and pick them up. We have collars with our contact info that are on them always because of this fact. My parents are big on not hunting or removing wild animals unless they are a danger to us. They always had the mindset that we are living in their home. They were here first. Just respect and be aware of your surroundings. For the most part, the wildlife leaves us and our livestock alone. Other than Jacob the black bear breaking into the grain shed, and elk eating hay bales. We had a fairly large cougar who learned that our llamas made easy meals. The cougar ate all 9 of them in less than a year. The last straw was when I was walking in the horse pasture and interrupted the big cat's lunch. Last llama. Luckily, the family Pyrenees put himself between the cougar and I. I have no doubt if it wasn't for him, I'd not be here today. My dad decided he had to do something. He truly didn't want to use lethal methods and started researching other options. He came across a breeder who breeds coonhounds and reached out. The breeder was extremely helpful and told my dad that most cougars have had some kind of run-in with hunting dogs, so they won't be as bold. So we bought a red-bone coonhound, after doing lots of research on the breed and making sure we could handle one. Gus Timberchopper was flown from Virginia to Canada and quickly became a valued family member. As anyone knows with any hound, the nose goes down and the ears turn off. Gus becomes a favorite of all our neighbors, as his wandering helps with predators and livestock. Life was peaceful, other than a few trips to the shelter to pick up Gus. The peace would not last though. Enter entitled family. They saw our 5 dogs chilling on our property, and decided they were abandoned or lost. Not the case. My brother and I were playing in the creek, and the dogs had wandered away not too far, but far enough that the family didn't see us. The entitled family then pulled off the road and got out of the vehicle, and started trying to coax the dogs into their van. 3 of our dogs ran back to the creek where we were playing. Our Pyrenees, Togo, and Gus stayed. The entitled dad somehow caught Gus and started dragging him to their van. Gus started to freak out. He started to bark, alerting me that something wasn't right, so I went to see what is happening. Well, 12-year-old me saw some random guy trying to get Gus in his van, and the entitled kids and mom were gushing over how cute he was, and how he will be the perfect dog for them. I wasn't too nervous, as this happens often. People see the dogs, no house, and think they're lost or someone dumped them, and try to help the owners by taking them to a shelter or vet, then often call or stop by to apologize for causing any inconvenience. I yelled out, "Hey, that dog isn't lost, he's with us." The entitled kids started to scream that they wanted the dog, and they deserved the dog. Then they burst into uncontrollable sobs. The entitled mom asked me to come closer so we don't have to yell. I politely declined and said again that Gus was ours, and asked the dad to please stop. The entitled dad grunted and tried to pick up Gus. Gus ended up biting the guy on his hand. He didn't break the skin, more of a warning nip. The entitled dad let go and Gus came running back to me. The entitled dad looked furious and started to walk towards me and Gus, yelling that I shouldn't own dogs because clearly we don't train or properly care for them, and how much of a better home they could offer him. I was starting to panic because this guy looked so mad, raging about how he'll teach that red bastard proper manners. I'm backing away while holding onto Gus's collar. Togo quickly stood in front of me. I was begging the entitled dad to back off and to leave. Entitled dad said something along the lines of, "I'm taking this dog to teach you a lesson. If you don't look after your pets, they will find a better home." I told him to stop, as Togo is very, very protective of me and my brother. And while he has lots of training, he started showing signs of being too aggressive with people, and we didn't want him to bite someone unprovoked. Entitled dad did stop for a moment, but the entitled mom and kids were screaming that they wanted this dog. It had to be this dog. Togo gave entitled dad lots of warnings, low growls, bared teeth, lunging, and snapping. Entitled dad tried to grab Gus by the collar and ended up knocking me down. Togo latched onto the entitled dad's arm and started to shake his head and yank the guy off his feet. One of the other dogs, she belonged to my uncle, came after I screamed and grabbed entitled dad by his pant leg, ripping them. My brother also joined because he heard me scream. I got him to take Gus and told him to run home and get dad. Togo wouldn't listen when I tried to get him to let go. The entitled kids and the mom tried to get out to help. Thankfully, they listened when I screamed stop. Entitled dad was yelling to call the dog off, and how he would see to it that all of our dogs would be put down, and that we would never be allowed to own another again. At this point, I was scared, angry, and overwhelmed. I started to cry. I thought that Togo would be put down for sure, and that if entitled dad took us to court, he'd somehow get Gus. Togo let entitled dad's arm go, but made it clear that entitled dad was to stay on the ground. Anytime he tried to stand, Togo would knock him down and growl in his face. My dad came racing down the driveway, ready for war. The entitled family started saying how Togo attacked unprovoked, and that I misunderstood what they were doing. My dad told the family that the police and an ambulance will be arriving, and that they best stay put, and if they decide to drive away, that he has pictures of the dad and vehicle, and he will press every kind of charges he legally can. My dad called some neighbors to come help if things go sideways. The police and ambulance arrive. The entitled dad will need stitches in his arm. They told the police that they thought the dogs weren't mine, and I was lying, and the kids want a dog so bad, but they didn't want to pay for one. They saw ours and thought they were strays. None of our dogs looked like strays, well-fed, brushed, and spoiled. The entitled dad then said, when I told him to stop or he could get hurt, he took it as I was threatening him, and that's why he didn't listen. Him and his wife were demanding that Togo be put down immediately, and that we are animal hoarders who need to be charged and banned from owning any kind of animal. The police and paramedics told him he was very lucky. Togo is a guardian dog. They are bred for being protectors. Togo was only trying to protect me. The entitled dad didn't care. He took us to court. Entitled dad got 34 stitches in his arm. In the courthouse, the entitled mom came to my parents and said she had an offer. If they accepted, they dropped the lawsuit. They wanted us to give them Gus. Dad told her to pound sand in a less polite speech. In the end, thanks to the game cameras Dad had in various places, we had footage. The judge was less than amused, as the entitled family made it sound like I ordered my dog to attack them, when they just wanted to play with the dog. Judge pointed out that a 12-year-old girl versus a 40-something grown man was not a fair fight, and that my dogs just evened the odds. Dad also decided that he'd fence off my brother and I's favorite places so that the dogs can't wander. I do wonder sometimes about the entitled family, and I have a question I'd love to ask. After all the expenses, wouldn't it have been cheaper to just buy or adopt a dog rather than steal one? That's it for today, guys. Thank you for watching. Be sure to drop a like, I'd really appreciate it. And also subscribe for more content like this. So I'm out of here. Have an awesome day, and I'll see you all next time.